I recall going to see Avengers Endgame all those years ago, and it was a really special experience for me. Where I'm from, people don't clap and cheer at movies. People usually try and stay quiet. But this was the first time I went to a movie where people just could not help themselves. There was laughing, cheering, gasping, crying. It was a very unique experience for me, and I think for everyone else in that theatre as well. Marvel was fresh off the heels of Avengers Infinity War, which had the audience in the palm of their hands, waiting to see how they followed that up. This movie was the end of the MCU as we knew it. It was an end of an era. I do recall really enjoying Endgame at the time, and even for a little while after its release, while I was still emotionally blinded. But my feelings towards it kind of changed when it came out on Blu-ray, and I watched it all alone on my TV in my bedroom. Something just felt off. It had a really awful rewatchability. I was kind of waiting for it to end at a certain point. I didn't go back and watch it again after that viewing, except for when I came back to it to make this video. I felt this way about Endgame for a while now, and I just couldn't understand why I didn't really like it on repeat viewings. Then I had the realization, Avengers Endgame is not a movie. It was an event. It's a one and done.
Cap. Sorry, buddy, we got a problem.
Yeah, we do.
That's not to say that there aren't things about it that I really enjoyed. There's plenty of things in it that I really like, even on repeat viewings. That opening scene with Clint Barton's family disappearing is fantastic. It just immediately sets the tone and brings the audience right back to the end of Avengers Infinity War. I like how they somehow gave Nebula her most significant character arc throughout the entire saga in this one movie, literally and symbolically killing her past self. I like how it shows all the Avengers coming to terms with their loss, and it wallows in that despair. Happy Hogan promising to get Tony's daughter all the cheeseburgers she wants after his death really hits hard for me. Happy has always been there for Tony, and we've seen that relationship evolve over the course of several movies. It's nice knowing that Happy is still there for Tony, even after his death, looking after his daughter. Captain America post-Thanos is really great. He seems to have an entirely new perspective on the world. He can joke around and make fun of himself. He doesn't take things so seriously, and he has some really funny moments, but subtle funny, not ha-ha funny.
You know, I'd offer to cook you dinner, but you seem pretty miserable already.
I even love how he has no patience for his past self. He seems annoyed by his own one-liners.
I could do this all day. I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
And that Hail Hydra joke, I am still laughing all these years later. In a movie full of pointless callbacks, this one was genius. There's plenty of stuff to like up until the time travel nonsense begins, although I do disagree with the direction they chose to take the story. I don't think they should have killed off present-day Thanos at the start of the movie. That version of Thanos should have been the one the Avengers faced off against in the third act. Thanos shouldn't have been able to destroy the stones. I know it's hard to write a story where the Avengers beat a Thanos with all 6 Infinity Stones, but it would have been much simpler in a way. Just have Thanos get weaker and weaker every time he uses the gauntlet, until it eventually becomes feasible for the Avengers to challenge him. We already saw how withered he was after the snap in Infinity War. Write it so that he can no longer use the gauntlet's full power. Write it so that he causes harm to himself with the more elaborate acts he uses. Have the Avengers go up against that version of Thanos, the Thanos we all fell in love with in Avengers Infinity War. Once they mentioned time travel, I immediately thought, oh no, it's just such a disastrous idea. If your movie isn't explicitly about time travel, then just don't use it.
Time travel! What?
Gwyneth Paltrow reacting to Tony Stark figuring out time travel is just so funny. She just can't even believe the words on the script. She's legitimately just thinking, what the f*** is going on?
Wow. That's amazing.
Looking at the current state of the MCU and the opinions people have towards it, it does seem pretty odd to pin Avengers Endgame as the origin point of all the cinematic universe's current issues. While I will pin that on the changing of CEOs at Disney and the focus on Disney Plus pressuring Marvel to focus more on quantity over quality to feed Disney Plus, I actually do think a lot of the MCU's big issues originate in Endgame. It's no secret that the MCU is the most successful franchise in Hollywood history. For a while there, the movies averaged $1 billion in revenue. Regardless of this, even though Marvel maybe had a 2 out of 3 hit or miss rate prior to Endgame, critically speaking, the universe always remained grounded and focused on the story, regardless of their success. But Endgame is where Marvel Studios went up its own ass a little bit.
Valkyrie, great to see you, angry girl.
I think I liked you better either of the other ways.
This was pretty much their last chance to cash in on about 10 years worth of nostalgia. So they felt they just had to do it, regardless if it broke immersion. And I think that was Endgame's fatal mistake.
That was a mistake.
This movie kind of lazily follows a normal 3-act structure, and at a certain point it's just kind of stuff happening. Callback after callback and reference after reference. They padded the movie with stuff that would get a pop out of the audience. For the first time, I think this is where I saw the MCU as something made by a movie studio, rather than thinking of it as a real world. As I alluded to earlier, this kind of stuff can very easily break an audience out of their trance. They suddenly become hyper aware that they are watching a movie instead of being in that world themselves. Look, is Avengers Endgame bad? I really don't know what side I fall on. There are things that I like and things that I don't like. But I do think that it failed as a movie, and it has had a hugely negative effect on the preceding Marvel movies and TV shows. Marvel Studios has kind of become addicted to getting those pop moments from their audience. The MCU wasn't built on this kind of filmmaking. I could watch Avengers Infinity War every week, and I would not get tired of it. Because that movie just focuses on the story it's telling, and it's just pure quality. It's a well-written movie. We've seen movies such as Spider-Man No Way Home tread a very similar path as Endgame, but I argue they did a better job at weaving those pop moments into the story. It's a very difficult thing to do, and the associated risks can be disastrous. It is critical that if you are going to try and give your audience some fan service, you have to be very careful not to break the audience's immersion. Once you do that, the audience loses their investment in the world and the franchise. So what do you think? How do you feel about Avengers Endgame? Is it a movie, or was it simply a fan event? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you think I'm wrong, I'd be really curious to hear your argument.